Hi, welcome to 0xTalks by OKC Podcast. And here we talk about DeFi, GameFi, Metaverse, crypto, and everything else related to them. This is your host, James. What's going on, guys? Today is March 28th, and we're bringing you yet another episode of 0xTalks. In today's podcast, we bring you our talk with Peng and Skweres from Dexpools. Before we jump into that, let me talk a bit about what's been happening at OKC over the past few days. As you might have noticed, we have rebranded ourselves as OKC in order to unify the brand with OKX, and to make the transition easier and more suitable for branding and association. Over the past few days, we have a few projects deploying on OKC. NFT Box, also known as HZ, is a breakthrough NFT asset interactive platform. It is developing into a platform covering crypto art and game assets. NFT Box aims to be the players, collectors, and artists' first choice through a fully decentralized interaction. 0xDAO is also deployed on OKC, and it's a platform for creating and managing decentralized autonomous organizations. To create your own DAO, you no longer need to understand the code or be able to write a smart contract. Thanks to 0xDAO, it will take you less than 1 minute to create your own decentralized autonomous organization. UBA, Universal Basic Asset, supports OKC to provide infrastructure for future SocialFi projects on OKC. UBA is a SocialFi oracle with Web3 privacy protection, and it opens the interface to SocialFi developers to access. UBA provides the SocialFi Oracle interface, builds new underlying infrastructure, and assists OKC in creating a more friendly developer ecosystem to facilitate the deployment of SocialFi developers on OKC in the future. 8G Ventures, Asian-based blockchain company, also has signed a partnership with OKC. 8G Ventures plans to discover related startups such as DeFi and NFT in Asia, together with OKC, and support smart contract development and auditing so that these projects can expand into the Korean and Asian markets. Simon Jong, the CEO of 8G Ventures, said, OKC is a very solid smart contract platform based on the global exchange OKX. Together with OKC, we'll provide the service to companies wishing to start a blockchain business, and I think that we'll be able to satisfy the needs of expanding the ecosystem. And lastly, our ecosystem core developer Li Jingsai had an Ask Me Anything session on Sunday with r/cryptocurrency, one of the largest crypto communities on Reddit, and he talked about the present and the future of OKC and OKX. Welcome to the second part of 0xTalks by OKC Podcast, and today we have Daniel and Travis, the founders of Dex Pools, joining us to our podcast. Well, before we start, I would like to make a quick introduction about Dex Pools. So Dex Pools is a decentralized peer-to-peer OTC DeFi platform, and Dex Pools fuels traders, DeFi trading platforms, and launchpads IDO teams with unique peer-to-peer OTC advantage. Dex Pools IDO is set for March 29th via Metis. So that will be essentially tomorrow. So you guys must be very excited about it.
Incredibly, it's been a long journey. Building out the product, gathering the community, and really building out the partnerships that we have seeked out. So to see it all come together and our IDO so soon is definitely thrilling for us.
That's awesome. Now, Daniel, could you make a quick introduction about yourself, and then we'll move on to Travis?
Yeah, so Peng, I've been involved in the DeFi space for several years, been kind of watching from the sidelines and investing in IDOs, investing in other tokens, investing in NFT projects, and traditionally come from a product management background. So Trav and I used to build apps together, and knowing how well we worked together, when he contacted me about this idea, and him being a veteran of the product space in DeFi, I was all in. So really happy to bring my background from management consulting firms and from tech firms to the DeFi world and kind of build a product that can bring real value to the community.
Awesome. And I'm Travis Skweres, founder of Dex Pools, and I have a background in building software products, both in the crypto DeFi space as well as others like telecom, social. I met Dan while working at Boston Consulting Group, building applications for clients there. And as you mentioned, we had a great rapport and worked well together for over 2 years. So when I decided to jump back into DeFi and build something, I contacted Dan, and here we are.
Awesome, great guys. Now let's move on to talk about your project Dexpools. Now, what makes Dexpools different from other central exchanges and decentralized exchanges? What makes you guys stand out from the crowd?
Sure. I'll take a stab at that, and Dan, feel free to jump in as well. So Dexpools is a peer-to-peer trading platform. And what makes us stand out is, unlike a centralized exchange, for example, you are in control of your funds. You have your wallet, and we are not sort of storing anything for you. When you trade on Dexpools, you're trading with our smart contracts. And what makes us different from other decentralized exchanges, if your listeners are familiar with Uniswap or SushiSwap, for example, is that we do peer-to-peer trading. You're not trading with a liquidity pool. And so we have real-time messaging and a marketplace for offers where you can find deals and negotiate with other traders and then do the trade directly with that other person or that other wallet. And in that way, you avoid slippage, when potentially trading with a liquidity pool that might have low liquidity. And just to touch on what I think sets us apart really well is I was looking for, I've been a trader in DeFi for quite a long time, and I was OTCing or selling a lot of my tokens in Telegram chats and stuff like that. And I was really looking for a good OTC product where I could not trust another human being, rather trust a smart contract and trade my tokens. And I really just didn't find anything out there, which was kind of where the inspiration from Dexpools came.
Great. And Dan, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add is the big vision of being able to swap peer-to-peer with anything, right? Any digital asset. So that could be your typical ERC20 tokens that you invest into as a trader in IDOs or just trading in the open market, all the way to like NFTs that a lot of gamers are starting to pick up as assets, or if you're just a general investor in the NFT space. So our platform is meant to support trading of any of those assets eventually, and with the vision of being multi-chain very quickly, which we'll be supporting on our launch on April 12th. And then eventually moving to cross-chain, because we do think the cross-chain ecosystem is kind of where the industry is heading. So being able to swap with anyone, anywhere, with any asset is our big goal.
Awesome. That's great. Now let's talk more about the advantages that you guys provide. Well, essentially on your website, what you say is that Dexpools fuels traders. So that's the first group. DeFi trading platforms. That's the second group. And launchpads IDO teams. That's the third group. Now, can you elaborate more on the advantages that you guys have for each of these categories? Like for traders, what advantages do they get? Launchpads and IDOs, and for DeFi trading platforms?
Yeah, I can take this one. So for traders, we will be the only platform that allows you to trade P2P, negotiate a deal on the platform, and be able to go through the whole process without having to go to a communications platform like Telegram or something else. We will also be the only P2P platform that is multi-chain across, I think, 9+ ecosystems within the first couple of weeks. Which is amazing to me. Like being able to trade on AVAX, being able to trade on Ethereum, etc., is something that's going to help these traders that do invest into either low liquidity pool token pairs or large traders, right? Traders that are making huge trades that will impact both the market in a liquidity pool situation or themselves in terms of slippage hits because they're trading such high volumes of their tokens. The next one for decentralized exchanges or other dApps, essentially what we can do is partner with these decentralized parties and give them an offboarding area where they can let their traders trade off market and not impact markets, and also accept like a referral fee if they send someone our way. So it's really about how to take advantage of those situations where you would potentially lose a quote unquote customer. Imagine a trader who comes and sees slippage is 30% or 50%, and they feel like, oh, well, maybe, the situation is going to not be very advantageous for me to trade now and I can wait later. Maybe the slippage is different, or maybe I go to another decentralized exchange to try to make that trade. Instead, you could make them an offer to trade P2P and find a deal in our platform amongst the users there. And then with launchpads and IDOs, the idea is founders have an incentive to keep up the price of their token, right? And some of the biggest kind of offenders of crashing markets are the early investors and founders themselves. So being able to OTC, over the counter trade peer to peer would avoid that situation to an extent and allow them to essentially find a good, valuable deal and not completely destroy the market that they have worked so hard to build. It also allows anybody participating in an IDO to do the same, and anybody that wasn't able to participate in an IDO to find good deals on the market after an IDO. So that's kind of our thinking. A lot of our testing and conversations and partnerships have kind of validated those theses, and we feel pretty good about kind of our going forward direction with each of those groups.
As a relatively new OTC DeFi platform, what challenges are you guys facing as a company, and how are you guys handling them?
Sure. Yeah, just real quick. I mean, and Dan, you can jump in here as well. I mean, the challenge for any marketplace or trading platform is the technology itself, right? And we've had our smart contracts audited by QuantStamp, and we're going through another round of audits soon as well for some new products we're building. So, building the right technology and making sure that it does what it's supposed to do. And then there's also the challenge of like the chicken and the egg and finding traders and finding deal flow. And so forming various partnerships with, other companies such as Dexes, launchpads, and so on. There's a lot of things we're trying to do around the launch schedule to make sure that, we have deal flow on Dex Pools day one. Dan, I don't know if you had anything to add there.
Yeah, I think Travis gave a very specific answer on both fronts. My answer is a little bit more generic. So I think it's the typical challenges that you face as like a startup, right? Like, where do you allocate your resources? What kind of product you build, which Travis touched on. How do you work with your community and make sure that you're not only helping them in terms of value, but also staying ahead of them in terms of knowing what challenges you may be addressing with your product. All of those are things that are obviously challenges for us, but I think Travis and I having a formal product background and being able to work in the consulting world and really have to think through those problems for clients helps us on the product side quite a bit. I think those are the biggest challenges. In terms of the other things that Travis mentioned, in terms of building partnerships and everything like that, we've seen immense momentum in the last few weeks. So we've gotten support from Polygon, an official partnership with Metis, discussions, and in the very late stages with Arbitrum, Moonbeam, and Moonriver. So we've got some really cool stuff upcoming, and we're excited to just see the momentum keep building.
Yeah, you guys are mentioning about partnerships, and I know that it's a very important aspect of doing business, whether it's in a Web2 space or Web3 space. Now, when you are, let's say, reaching out to partners, what do you essentially look for? What do you want that those partners can offer you? So how do you guys essentially choose your partners?
Yeah, I think our team is pretty long-term thinking. So we always think about the long tail of the relationship, like a year down the road as we're building momentum, like what could come out of this relationship and what can we bring to the table for our partner as well. So just to be more specific, like when we looked at OEC, or what is OKC now, we saw a lot of potential, right? There's obviously the parent CEX. There's a lot of interest in the Asian market and in other markets in being partnered with a CEX plus a chain. And I think there's a lot of innovation behind the scenes that's starting to be pushed. So for us, it's all about potential, right? And then of course, like the relationship itself, like how easy it is it to work with the team? Because to us, it doesn't matter how cool the technology is or what the benefits are. If you can't communicate well and you can't work with the team, there's not a culture fit. We just find it really hard to build a strong partnership that's going to benefit both sides. So I'm really happy that, both kind of check marks have been hit by OKC, and I do see a bright future with the ecosystem.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Now, let's now move on to you guys and focus on both of you. Like, well, we all know that crypto space is now very, very tough, and especially for developers and new founders. There's so much stuff going on, and it's really hard to keep up with everything that's going on. And if you're probably trying to develop something, most likely it's out there already. So, as a founder, what challenges do you guys personally face on a day-to-day basis, and what would you guys recommend for other developers or for other founders that are trying to break into the space?
Sure. So I think because the crypto space is so hot, um, I think it amplifies a lot of the challenges that any startup in any industry face, just on a much larger scale, right? Like we have challenges on a daily basis, finding and retaining talent, to work on our team and build our application. I mean, luckily, we have a core team of engineers that are amazing, right? But as we scale out our products, and grow, build other features, we're going to have to compete with all of the other companies in the space, to find those developers and find that talent. So that's always going to continue to be a challenge in crypto. And then I also just recommend for entrepreneurs, build something, that solves a problem. I like to say that, if you or your friends or people would use the product, if it's something that everyone needs, then that's a good place to start in terms of inspiration, right? So I think that's something that's key, is be passionate about and be solving a problem when you're starting a company in crypto. And it's hard to keep up with everything out there, right? As you mentioned, things are changing so rapidly. Oftentimes when you do have an idea, you can find another company that's doing it, but don't let that discourage you, right? Go after your vision. We certainly aren't the first company to try OTC trading, right? We just think that we're going to do it well and do it better. So.
Awesome. I think building on one of Travis's points, which is building something valuable, useful for the space. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to think about that, but you can start by building a business case and looking at a problem that you may face in the industry, or you may have heard in the industry that people are facing. That's kind of where we started, but being able to back it up with like numbers and make some hypothesis about what you can bring to the table, and then what you can get in terms of value for yourself and the team, right? So when we looked at the OTC space, it's a huge industry in crypto that kind of goes under the radar because all those deals are being done by large brokers, they're being done in Telegram channels. You're not seeing those huge numbers get pumped up in those DeFi tracking platforms necessarily. But in terms of what we've seen, it's $100 million business per day. Now, when you break that apart, that includes numbers from like market makers in the space. Obviously, that's going to distort things because those market makers are just trying to stabilize exchanges. But even if you take a portion of that, right, like say you can capture 5% of that space, just running the math, it would bring huge value to all the Dex Pools ecosystem. Also, the qualitative side, like looking at the problem at hand, like to us, when you have something as technically advanced as decentralized finance, and then you have hordes of traders on Telegram, on Discord, on phone calls with each other, trying to find deals and sending those transactions straight to each other or to a broker without an escrow platform, that to us is like, man, like we're using like medieval trading tactics to address a problem in a space that's super forward thinking, right? So for us, it was almost a no-brainer to say, okay, we know that some platforms have tried this in the past and tried to solve for the problem. We wanted to look at what they tried and why they failed, and then we wanted to also look at the problem at hand between all these traders and try to think of what could solve their problems the best. And so that's why we've thought of things like messaging, where you can negotiate a deal. That's why we've thought of multi-asset swapping. That's why we've thought of things like being able to trade multi-chain from day one. And then you can test and learn, right? Like maybe we're completely wrong, maybe we're completely right. But at the end of the day, you can at least take a look at your hypothesis and then make adjustments and make it more about facts rather than just like feelings about founding something off of a whim, which I've seen a lot of DeFi founders do. Like they just create another own fork, or they create another Dex without thinking about the audience at hand and the challenges that they face in everyday normal situations. So I think that blend of being like really quantitative and qualitative about your business case and being able to kind of go from there to creating a product is homework that every founder should do.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And when you have that hypothesis and when you're trying to build a product, you know that the team is one of the backbones of this project. Because without a proper team, whether your idea is $1 billion idea, it's not going to pan out because, well, you don't have that backbone. You don't have that support from the other people that can essentially help you to develop that product and make it out to the space, to the community. So would you talk a little bit about your team and how you guys are handling your day-to-day basic activities?
Sure. So on the development side, I'll talk a little bit about that, and Dan can talk about some of the operations and marketing. So I personally interview every engineer that we hire. That won't always be scalable, but right now it makes sense. And I think we've got a really great core team of engineers. We're all distributed in different cities. We don't really have an office or anything like that. That seems to be the norm these days in crypto and with COVID. So every morning we hop onto Discord or Skype and we chat and we talk about some of the tasks we need to work on that day, anything that happened yesterday, any blockers. We practice, some form of agile, though it's pretty loose with a small team. And we use, different technologies such as Trello and Jira to keep track of the things we're trying to build as we're cranking out new code.
Yeah, I think the only other thing to add to the development workflow is like designs and being able to get some feedback from our inner circle of advisors and other kind of like groups that would be willing to give us product feedback that we trust. So we do have a very product focused mindset in terms of showing prototypes, showing designs before we get to development. And then we end up handing those designs over to the development team. Obviously, with the team as small as ours, we can move fast, but also be able to kind of take on and wear multiple hats. So kudos to Travis for doing a lot of the product work and design thinking when we don't have necessarily the bandwidth to just crank out like UI mockups and stuff like that. So everybody's been super easy to work with. And I think it's awesome to see, like, it's rare to find actually developers that have a design eye, which I think we have several on our development team. On the ops front, every day is about thinking about the planning in order to build community. What kind of marketing activities are coming up to support those community building activities? And then outside of that is partnerships, right, for the ops side. Of course, there's all the boring stuff like accounting, like dealing with like payroll, all that kind of stuff. And that's just part of the life of an entrepreneur, right? But Travis and I kind of tackled that as a team. But we have a really, really heavy focus on figuring out which ecosystems we can continue to give value to and build relationships with, who are the right parties to work with, and then kind of executing on those relationships, which is how we got here, right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into our day-to-day.
Yeah, excellent. Yes. And both of you have the background in working for Web2 companies. Well, how different is working in Web3 compared to Web2?
There are some similarities, in some technologies, obviously, that are common across the different stacks. But Web3 does have its challenges, and especially on the engineering side, I definitely have to dive into a lot of the concepts around Web3 and building dApps or decentralized apps on Web3 with developers to make sure that they have that knowledge, because it is a different skill set from just, say, calling an API, right? And so there's definitely technical challenges. I will say it's just a lot more fun, in my opinion. I think that's why me and Dan are here, right? I remember in the consulting world, working for clients, and we worked for Fortune 500 companies and startups building cool things. But I was always drawn to cryptocurrency, and I've been in the industry so long. I think this is the hottest space right now, but it's also for me, the most fun to work in.
Yeah, I echo some of that too. I think there's a lot of similarities, obviously, from an operations standpoint, from development practices, maybe not the development itself. We draw pretty heavily from our more formal experience. And then just looking at the startup world, right? Like what we're doing is very similar to what a Web2 company would do, right? Build a prototype, go to MVP, get the product out, kind of start getting feedback, test, and then keep building, and making sure you're doing the right thing with the feedback you're getting. I think what's different is really how new everything is, even though DeFi has been around for years and there's been teams building dApps for years as well. The industry is still evolving super quick. So there are possibly a lot of changes that come through the product side, through how the market reacts to things. We just talked about the volatility of the space before. And to me, that's fun. A lot of teams maybe wouldn't like that. But for us, like when I see that there's constant change and there's constant evolution, to me, that shows there's opportunity. And being able to kind of go to week and see like what the big thing is that's changing the crypto space and what kind of innovations are coming out on the front across the different chains is pretty amazing to me. But I imagine that was probably like, if I guess the biggest comparison in the Web2 space would be like the .com era. Like I'm sure there were teams feeling the same thing as we were, looking at all the competition, looking at the ecosystem partnerships, looking at everybody else building and like seeing how quick things were moving. I feel like we're still years away from maturation, and that just means we're going to be riding this rodeo until then.
Essentially, you guys are right with the DeFi space, well, crypto space especially, evolving rapidly, and you see new changes every single day. And even if you are in this DeFi space for a long time, there's always something that you don't know, and there's always something that you need to learn and look out for. And that makes it, of course, really, really interesting. And that's a really fantastic thing for people like you guys who are trying to build something that can really help the communities and help the people that are in the DeFi space. Now, let's move on to talk a little bit about DeFi in a more general sense. So, what evolution do you think DeFi will see in 2022?
Yeah, I'll go first. I guess it might not be an evolution, but in terms of a trend, I think gaming presents one of the most interesting and pragmatic reasons to use blockchain technology. And we've already seen a lot of AAA style studios developing their own games that may come out this year. Big time for one of them. And we're going to see that thesis put to test really quickly. Like, do gamers really want to utilize ownership of their assets and take them potentially across games? What kind of currencies are going to be in the market because of these games, and how are people going to trade, right? And that's one of the reasons why we thought multi-asset swapping would be so interesting, especially cross-chain. An example would be Axie has their own chain, right? And there's other companies thinking about creating their own chain specifically for a game. So in order to make a trade across those chains, how can we support these gamers? And knowing that gamers are very ADHD and they play many games, how can we take advantage of the fact that there's going to be many tokens in the market that will potentially have low liquidity pools as gamers look to liquidate their assets to play another game. So I think there's a lot of interesting things in the gaming space that can find use case for a product. But I also think that this year, we're going to see some amazing kind of progress for these games coming out in the GameFi space and NFT space.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things I see, well, obviously DeFi is exploding, right? And one of the issues DeFi has always had has been the on-ramp, or how do you, get more people into the space? It's hard to use. A lot of people don't understand how to create a wallet or manage a wallet, right? And I think as a lot of those barriers drop and the applications and the technologies improve, we'll start to see really cool adoption on a more mass scale for things like lending, leverage. There's a lot of lending protocols out there that I think have a lot more to do and can impact just the average person rather than just people looking for yield and trading in DeFi. And so I think you're going to start to see the industry creep into mainstream even more than it already has, as the apps get better and easier to use.
Yeah, Travis, what you were saying is right, especially with the learning curve that now people are having in as those barriers on how to create a wallet, all those basic simple stuff, once they all drop out, we're going to see more mainstream and there will be more adoption. I think in this DeFi space, we are waiting for that moment where, everyone else just moves on from learning or from trying to understand what that really is to adopting it and using it on their day-to-day lives. And then you talked about GameFi. Yeah, I really agree with that. And who knows, maybe as we saw the DeFi summer in 2020, maybe in 2022 we'll have GameFi summer. Yeah, it's cool to see what's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Very excited.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on our podcast and talk about your ideas and how Dex Pools is trying to improve this space and how you guys as founders saw the challenges and how you guys trying to handle them. And well, I know that Dex Pools is having the IDOs, I think tomorrow, March 29th. And as you mentioned, a multi-chain P2P trading platform is going live on April 12th. So I wish you good luck, guys, and I hope to see Dexpool evolve and be one of the main parts of DeFi system in the future.
Thank you, James. And I just wanted to add one more thing. So we're going to have our IDO on the 29th to 31st of this month. We're going to have our Copper launch, and this is going to be so we have a more open kind of raise to the other chains that have been supporting us on April 5th to the 7th. We are curated by Balancer Intern, who's the main curator of Copper launch. And then we have our platform launch, like you mentioned, on April 12th. Also, if anybody in the OKC ecosystem needs any kind of like thought partnership in order to get product feedback or wants to discuss partnerships in general, feel free to reach out to Travis and I. We are open to any kind of conversations where we can provide value. So thank you.
Yep, really appreciate you having us. Enjoyed this, and thanks for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was our honor to have you guys come onto this podcast. And I hope and I believe this is not going to be our last conversation. And I hope that we're going to have more conversations in the future. Stay safe. To learn more about Dex Pools, check out the show notes of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe. Peace.